Welcome to Homeschool Conversations with Humility and Doxology, a series of real-life conversations with homeschool moms, dads, and other educators. I'm Amy Sloan, a second-generation homeschool mom of 5, and I'm so glad that you're here. Today, we are joined by Megan and Daniel Tenney. Thank you guys both for being here.
Yes, we're excited.
Thanks for having us.
Well, Megan and her husband Daniel have been traveling full-time with their 4 young kids for almost 2 years. In early 2020, after 12 years of blogging on her first site, Megan founded Family Gap Year Guide, a new site and course that teaches families how to enrich their lives and strengthen relationships while following their dreams of seeing the world. Sounds amazing. Any family, Megan says, that wants to travel full-time can make it happen. You don't have to be rich or an influencer, just a regular family with wanderlust. So I am so excited to get to hear how you guys have made this work. Can you start just by telling us a little bit about yourselves and about your family?
Sure, yeah. So I grew up in Maine and Daniel grew up in Arizona, so complete opposite sides of the country. And we met when we were both in college and we had a summer job as theme park entertainers. We've always done the performing arts. So I was a theater major, he was a music major. We met singing and dancing together and fell in love and eventually got married and lived in Arizona. So I moved out to Arizona. We lived there for 13 years, something like that, and had 4 kids.
And how old are your children now? What's their age range?
So our oldest is 11 and he's a boy. And then we have a girl who is 9, another boy who is almost 7, and another girl who is 3.
So still kind of fairly young. Yeah. But starting to hit that sweet spot where they can start like buckling themselves in and once everyone can be a little bit more independent. I feel like this past year, my youngest just turned 5, but just over the past year, I was like, I think I'm entering a whole new phase of mothering now. This is great.
Definitely. When we started traveling, our youngest was still in diapers. And maybe about a year into it, we were at his mom's house for like 5 weeks. And I said, we're potty training, this is gonna happen. And then we're gonna be done with diapers forever. And it worked, she was ready. And we're definitely into that next stage, I think.
Yeah, so fun. Well, how did you guys come to homeschooling? Were you homeschooling even before you kind of took your family on the road? And how would you kind of describe your homeschool personality?
So no, homeschooling was never really on our radar. We've both been classroom teachers and just kind of always thought we'll put our kids in school. So it was kind of the traveling came first. And to do that, we had to homeschool. So it's kind of how it worked.
And that was one of our big concerns with our kids and their education. Are we going to be able to keep up with that? And is that going to be a positive thing for them? And are we going to make that work?
So what have you kind of seen over the past 2 years? How has that worked out?
Well, our oldest 2 they had already been going to public school. Actually, it was a charter school, but really similar. And they were in accelerated classes. So we originally were only going to do a year. We're just going to take up the 1 school year. Now it's like 2 years later. But and so we weren't too worried because we're like, well, they're ahead. So if we like worst case scenario and like we teach them nothing the whole year, which we weren't worried about, but we're like, if they learn nothing, then they'll be right where they need to be. But we've found that the one-on-one or one-on-4 as it is, they can go so far so fast. So it was a concern, but it didn't need to be because you can just go so far with them when you've got that one-on-one attention.
And that was a bit of a struggle with our daughter, who had never had to work very hard at school. School was always just real easy, just put in a little bit of effort and then read your book for the rest of the day. And when she had to realize that, no, dad's gonna really hold you to it and he's gonna make you work hard. And if you already know this, we're gonna move on to the next thing. There was an emotional wall to get past, a little bit of pushback.
For sure. And another challenge was our third child, so our second son, he was supposed to start kindergarten, so he wasn't quite reading yet. And I was like, that means we have to teach him how to read. And that was daunting for me.
Yeah.
Because our oldest son, I remember he went into kindergarten, he had some sight words, but wasn't fully reading yet. And I remember trying to teach him and just getting frustrated and realizing I didn't have the ability to teach my child how to read. And then our daughter, she just woke up one morning and knew how to read before she even went to kindergarten. She's always been a natural reader. So yeah, it fell upon us to teach our son to read, and but an awesome reader.
Yeah.
I guess that's probably mostly thanks to you, because he does the bulk of the homeschooling.
Yeah. So Daniel, you are the primary homeschool educator. What do you see are some of the benefits of having dad as that homeschool educator?
Well, I can tell you about my personality and how I kind of approach it. Even when I spent 12 years as a classroom teacher, and even then, one of the things that I really tried to do was to teach independence and to really foster that sort of, self-driven kind of learning, which meant, if I took a day off, my lesson plan said, first period, they know what to do, just let them do it. Second period, they let these kids run the class. Third period. So, I had kids taking roll and kids that were in charge of this and kids that were in charge of that. And that's really translated to the way that we homeschool. So I've tried to set up structures and to set up ways that they can be in charge of their own learning, ways where I don't necessarily have to be on top of them 24/7. That was a big struggle at first. I had 3 kids at 3 different levels who were clamoring for my attention, and I hadn't really set up any sort of structure or system for them to know what to do, and I was being pulled in all these different directions and pulling my hair out. And over time, I started to figure out the systems and the ways to structure it.
Yeah, so while we don't follow like a specific homeschool curriculum, you might say that we've kind of developed our own system of doing things. So we kind of pull from a bunch of different resources. We use Duolingo and a bunch of different resources that are out there, but we've developed this really great system of kind of how to keep track of like everything that they do each day, how they report back to him. Anything else? Yeah, and I feel like it's kind of morphed into not just their school day, but their everyday life. Like they know they get up, they get ready for the day, they are in charge of their own breakfast, and then they get started on school and they know exactly what's expected of them every day.
Yeah.
I feel like the ability to pick and choose just the right things for your own family and not to try to fit into somebody else's box is one of my favorite parts of homeschooling. And also, I love what you were saying, that you just you get up and everyone knows a pattern. And it's not like a rigid, and then at 5:05, you will do this and in that way, but it takes out that decision fatigue of well, what comes next? I don't know. And you don't have to always be on them to do the next thing, because you just know what's coming next.
Yeah, decision fatigue was a real thing for a while. And, something else that I was big on as a classroom teacher, and I'm still big on now, is, always tweaking and always kind of trying to change and always kind of trying to figure out a little better way of doing something. And that's kind of how we've gotten to where we're at now.
Yeah, and another great thing about having that routine is because we're always traveling, that part of our life is not very constant. So every month the kids are waking up in a new house, but their routine pretty much stays the same. It's kind of cool because in new places, that gives us the opportunity, first of all, to just look at the system again and say, what tweaks do we want to make? But also what unique opportunities are in this location, whether it's the house itself maybe has something unique, or it's nearby a historical site that we could go visit, and then kind of incorporating those into their learning for the month. That's been really neat.
Yeah, because when you're traveling, that is some built-in education and learning right there. And I'm just so curious how you kind of got started on this adventure, and if you've always loved to travel, if you had always talked about, let's take the family on the road, or how did this all come to be? Because it sounds magical from the outside. I think all of us have that thing one day I'm just going to get in the car and go, but most of us don't. But you guys have actually done it.
That was us a lot. That was us a lot. And oh, if I was a billionaire, we'd just travel all the time.
Yeah, anytime I would get upset, I'm going to say it.
Okay.
He would say, I'll burn the house down.
We'll just burn it all and go.
A little extreme, but he was like, we can leave everything. We can get in the car and go. And like, it's actually kind of really sweet because he's like, that's more important. Like our family is the most important thing. And if this isn't working out, like we'll go find what will work. And finally it kind of came to that. And we were like, yeah, we want something else. But yeah, we always loved travel.
Yeah.
I traveled a lot growing up. Daniel didn't so much with your family,
right.
but he traveled to Asia to serve a mission for 2 years. So that was probably your first major travel experience, was halfway around the world. But then because we moved out to Arizona and my family was still in Maine for a while, we drove across country several times back and forth, and we'd always try to hit new places, take a slightly different route. And then we started doing it with our kids too. When they were born, they each got to have their own little trip to Maine after we had a new baby born. And then, once we realized that we could do this, like it was actually a possibility. And in my course, I talk about the fact that if you are willing to really cut those ties, that all of your bills kind of go out the window. Like if you're willing to not have a home base to come home to, which is what we did, we sold our house more. And all of a sudden we don't have utility bills anymore. We don't have landscaping bills. We don't have pest control bills, like all of these things that all of a sudden you have this chunk of money. And we realized it could be spent on our lodging for every month. And the financials actually worked out. So, like you said in your intro, we're not rich. Like you don't have to be rich to do this. You just have to kind of know the tricks of the trade.
Yeah, and I guess make your life really match up with your priorities. You had something that was important to you, so you had to make a choice. Like to say yes to one thing is to say no to something else, and you were able to really take what was important to your family and make that
work.
That's
a good point. Yeah, that's a good point, because it's always going to be some kind of give and take. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that would just not even consider it because they're like, well, I'm not going to sell my house. I love my house. Or I couldn't imagine not having that anchor to come back to. But the other thing is, it's not permanent. We're not going to live this life for our entire, our entire lives. The idea was always to eventually, and the reason it came about is because we were in Arizona, and I grew up on the East Coast and was kind of missing it, and we loved the beach. And so we were kind of thinking, well, maybe we should just move to the East Coast. And we're like, well, if we're going to move across the country anyway, why don't we just sell our house and then take our time getting there and like go here for a month, go here for a month. And now 2 years later, we still haven't settled down yet.
Well, what have been some of the unique challenges or maybe the unique benefits that you found of road schooling, having your kids on the road with you as well?
Well, one great thing that's happened is they just get to spend a lot of time with each other. And I know that they're going to walk away from this as best friends, and that they're going to look back and have these great memories of this place or that place or this activity or that activity that they got to spend with their siblings. And there's been rough times as well where they haven't gotten along, but it's also taught them how to deal with that and how to be in close proximity to someone even when you're not getting along, and how to get past that, how to get over that. It's really kind of taught us that, and it's really kind of taught them that.
Also, like, to be adaptable, because you just said, like, what do you do when you're around someone all the time and you're kind of annoyed by them? Like, we lived in West Virginia for a couple of weeks, and we had this big house with 3 bedrooms, 2 levels, like all these extra rooms. And then a few weeks later, we were in Brooklyn, New York, and we were in like a 1.5 bedroom apartment with like the living room had to be a bedroom, and there was 1 bath. It was just super tiny, and you can't go out in the backyard and play because there is no backyard plan. So we've lived in definitely a lot of different places, which is kind of a challenge, but also a benefit.
Yeah.
They become adaptable. And then, the other benefit is being able to see all these different things. Like in West Virginia, we hiked part of the Appalachian Trail. And in Texas, we learned about the Alamo, and we went to the Alamo. So that's neat. It's fun too when our kids talk about different places. I know we're from Arizona, but the other day we said something, we're like, oh, that's in Tucson. And Vanessa's like, I love Tucson. I'm like, she knows what Tucson is as opposed to Florida, as opposed to Washington State. They have these memories specific to the different places they've been. I love that they kind of have that knowledge of different areas of the world, or at least this country so far. We're supposed to, our next big plans were to travel overseas, and though we would be there right now, except for the coronavirus, that kind of derailed our plans. So in the meantime, we're just continuing to travel the US and see spots that we haven't seen yet, and eventually, hopefully, make our way over there.
Well, do you have a favorite place? I'm sure you may both have, well, I guess it might be the same, but you might have different places. What's been a favorite place and why that you've gone so far?
We have the same top 4, I think, and we have a hard time narrowing it down. But we really, really like New York City, and we really like South Carolina, the Grand Strand area. In fact, that's kind of where we're looking to maybe possibly settle down eventually. We're not ready to do it yet, but at some point. And you really like South Padre Island, Texas.
Yeah.
What's our 4th? Forget our 4th place.
I really like Orlando.
Top 3.
We had a good time in Orlando.
Maine, maybe?
Maine.
Maine, but only in the summer.
Only in the summer.
I've been to Maine one time. I was a teenager and it was August. And so I just remember the water was still so cold. And I actually looked back with a little panic. I can't believe I was in the water. It was so cold. I couldn't move my legs.
It never warms up. It doesn't at all. No, it's just for you. You just grin and bear it until you're numb from the neck down, and then you have a great time.
Yes. Well, you guys have mentioned that this is something, a kind of a road lifestyle, a travel lifestyle is something that's accessible to any family. And I guess I just want to ask a little bit about logistics for maybe a family who isn't willing to make the big jump and go for several years on the road or sell their house. Is there sort of different ways that families can try this, maybe in smaller chunks, or kind of what advice would you give to a family wanting to dip their toe in this idea?
Yeah, for sure. So something that we utilize almost always is Airbnb. And the cool thing about Airbnb is the owners kind of price it out however they choose. So one of the things that we noticed is if we're willing to go kind of anywhere, if you have a really specific destination, you're going to be beholden to what the prices are there and the cost of living. But if you just want to travel, there's other places available that might be on the cheaper side. And, if you're not going to go all in and sell your house and do all of that, it might mean saving up ahead of time. It might mean, like you said, going for a shorter period of time, maybe over the summer when the kids are out of school or something along those lines. One thing that we like to point out is there's a lot of similar courses out there that try to teach people how to travel based on the fact that they're going to be an Instagram influencer. And one of the things that we talk about is we are not influencers. Yes, I have a blog. It is not my full-time income. I work 8 to 5, Monday through Friday at a job where I can work remotely. Of course, everybody's working remotely right now, but that's one of the major things is if you have a job that you can work from anywhere, then you've got a ton of freedom. More so than, if you have to show up at the office Monday morning. And we both ended up with online jobs, and that's when we were like, well, we can be anywhere with Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
I was telling
my ways to make it work for sure.
I know some people will Airbnb their own home out.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to sell it, then maybe you can put it up on Airbnb. It gets booked. You use that money to go somewhere else.
That is so smart, because then you don't have to go through the permanent rent it out to someone for an extended period of time too.
Mm-hmm.
I was telling my husband I was going to be talking to you guys, and I was like, because he's an engineer, so he works in an office, but like everyone else, he's working from home in our bedroom closet right now. And I was like, if this has taught us anything, it's that really you can work from home. So let's go somewhere once everything opens.
Yeah, that's what we're wondering, how many businesses are going to pivot now and be like, oh, everybody's working from home and this is working out. Maybe we don't need to pay for that office space anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what is a destination that you have not yet gone as a family that you're most looking forward to?
All the places.
Yeah. Well, all these. One state that we've never been in is Kentucky, which is kind of funny because Kentucky is bordered by, I think, 7 different states, and we've been in all of them. But we have this thing where you can like picture a map of the United States. We color in all the states where we've had like a significant experience in. We color those green. So if we've just driven through a state, like that doesn't count. But we've been in it, so we color it yellow. And if we've never even been in the state at all, it's white. So I think we have 7 states that we've never been to out of the 50. And then I think maybe another 5 or so that we've just driven through. So it can be even something small. Like we drove on our way to Seattle. That was our first stop on our family gap year. We drove through Idaho, and we stopped at a little drive-in diner restaurant, and they served baked potato ice cream. Potatoes obviously being a big thing in Idaho, and it was just ice cream, but it looked just like a baked potato. It was like vanilla ice cream with cocoa powder, whipped cream on top. It looked like sour cream. It looked just like a baked potato. It was the weirdest thing to eat. And so we were like, okay, well, that was an experience that we had in Idaho. Check.
Really, though, we're looking forward to Europe. That's where we want to go next. And part of the advantage of this kind of lifestyle is literally anywhere in the world it's possible. So, we're going to pack up, and once it's a possibility, we're going to pack up and get on a plane and do this same thing around Europe.
Yeah, and as long as we're in the US, we have a minivan. That's how we, a lot of people are like, well, are you in an RV, or how do you make this work? I'm like, well, our minivan seats 7 and there are 6 of us, so mathematically that works out. And then we have like the below the floor storage compartments and in the trunk. And when we left on day 1, that car was packed to the gills. And since then, we've refined our packing process so it's down to like 2 bins and everybody has a backpack. And we kind of, we're thinking ahead to, we're going to fly to Europe. So everybody's got to just have a backpack, because we can't, drag bins of stuff and big luggage all around. We just need to learn to live out of a backpack. And so we kind of transitioned to that. And we still, as long as we have our car, we take a couple of extra luxury things, maybe some extra clothes, but we've learned how to live out of a backpack. And that's all in the course too.
and nothing will teach you minimalism more than having to carry your crap around. Because if you don't need it and it's getting in the way, it's underfoot, it's having to be, moved around or whatever, like you just get rid of it, because it becomes way more trouble than it's worth.
Yeah, and we've narrowed it down really to 2 things. You need clothes and you need screens. Because I need my computer to work. It's also my primary form of entertainment, streaming Netflix or Hulu or whatever. And I've got a Kindle. That's, I read, I'm not going to lug around 30 books, but I can lug around 1 Kindle and read 30 books on it. So yeah, screens and clothes. This is all you need in your life.
Well, I bet that kind of minimalism and that simplicity will probably affect the way you re-enter. Like whenever you guys do settle down, you'll have this whole other perspective of how much or how little you actually really need.
Yes.
I hope so.
Yes.
He's worried. He's like, once you have a house, you're going to fill it with everything. We do have a storage unit, that a 10 by 10 storage unit with all of our stuff. And it's in Arizona. And we've been back to Arizona like 3 times since we started. And every time I'm like, I just need to go visit my things. Just need to say hi.
Well, where can folks find you online, and tell us about the course that you've just released it, right? Is it live?
It's really close.
Almost. And maybe by the time this is published, it will be live.
Yes, hope so. I'm working hard on the last little unit. So you mentioned at the beginning, I've been a blogger for almost 12 years. That website is called Shaping Up to Be a Mom. shapinguptobemom.com. That one's more focused on family, home, and you. So it's making busy moms' lives easier and happier. So all kinds of parenting topics, fun kids activities, holiday-related stuff, like self-care tutorials, stuff like that. And I started to write about travel on there, but then when I started my new site, I moved the travel stuff, and I'm kind of still in the process of doing that. But all my travel stuff's going to be on the new site, which is Family Gap Year Guide, familygapyearguide.com. And the course is also called Family Gap Year Guide. And to access the course, you can go to familygapyearguide.com, and in the top navigation bar, it says the course, and that'll take you there. And the course is basically teaching regular families how to take their life on the road and do exactly as we did. So there's a whole unit on, everything you need to know is in this course. The last time I counted, I think there were 85 lessons. So it's about, making the decision and what are going to be the challenges of this lifestyle, and then planning out your route. And where do you stay? There's a whole section on financials. How do you budget for this? There's a whole section on getting ready to go, everything you need to, like all the details to tie up at home. And then packing. There's an entire unit just on packing, what to bring, how to pack it up, how to pack your bag, how to pack your car. And then there's two sections that kind of go hand in hand. One is life on the road. So it's kind of everyday life. A lot of the things we talked about, setting a routine when you're, in a different place every month. And then the other section is on like exploring the world, like how to find those really cool places in every location you visit. Go to the top tourist attractions, but also find these cool hidden off the beaten path type things. And then there's an entire section on road schooling, talking about kind of everything we talked about today, like our system for homeschooling and road schooling, which is basically just homeschooling on the road and then pulling in those unique things that you find when you're actually visiting different locations. And then there's going to be a traveling overseas section as soon as there can be. And then a bonus section that's got like some fun downloads, podcasts for kids, and a principled travel journal and some really fun things. So it'll teach you everything you know, A to Z. It's wrapping up my hours and hours of figuring it out for ourselves all into one.
I love it. You've already figured it all out, made all the mistakes. You can tell us all the things to do and not do.
Definitely. All the things not to bring.
And I will have all of those links up in the show notes at humilityanddoxology.com when this post or this interview goes live. So that will be easy for people to click through. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. This has been fun. And now I just need to go get on the road. I feel all inspired to go travel.
Definitely. Well, it's been so fun chatting with you. Thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Nice to meet you guys. Bye.